Welcome to today's Founders Fireside Chat. I'm Sharon Coleman, Senior Media Consultant for Make It Better Media Group in California. And today I'm excited to bring together two dynamic women. First is Helene Gayle, President and CEO of the Chicago Community Trust. She is an expert on global development, humanitarian, and health issues. Dr. Gayle spent 20 years with the Centers for Disease Control. She directed programs to address global health issues at the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, launched the McKinsey Social Initiative, and was president and CEO of CARE. Better featured Gayle in our 2021 Chicago's Most Powerful Women list, and she will be recognized as a top philanthropist in our upcoming winter issue. Next, I'd like to introduce the founder of Make It Better Media Group, Susan Noyes. Susan has built a multi-platform company serving similar demographics throughout Chicagoland and the San Francisco Bay Area by helping everyone live, love, work, and play with greater purpose. Make It Better Media Group, which includes Better Magazine in Chicago, strengthens communities by supporting social justice, family-owned, locally owned, sustainability, wellness, education, arts and culture, and best philanthropic practices. In fact, under her leadership, Make It Better Media Group has built a foundation of helping great community nonprofits from the day it launched over 14 years ago. It is my honor to bring these two incredible women together for today's Fireside Chat. Susan, take it away.
Thank you so much, Sharon, for that lovely introduction. And thank you, Helene, for joining us. As Sharon just said, you had a terrific resume before you arrived in Chicago. And one of the things that I particularly love is that while you were running CARE, you worked closely with U2's Vino. So closely that he refers to you as my queen in a tribute video that we will include in our follow-up article to today's discussion and on Better TV. And I very much recommend this video to everyone else who'd like to get to know you better too. I also love that you have been ranked by Forbes magazine as one of the most powerful women in the world. The Washington Post describes you as having features that are the envy of high fashion models. And when you married Dr. Stephen Keith in 2016, the New York Times provided the most comprehensive wedding coverage that I've seen. But more importantly, when COVID hit and social justice demands elevated in Chicago and across the country, you and the Chicago Community Trust led swift and impactful responses. Your programs and collaborations are why Better Magazine not only recognized you as one of the most powerful philanthropists, you will be at the very top of our list when it's published in November. So we are delighted to have the opportunity to learn about your important work with the Trust right now, but we're also very much hoping to that our audience can get to know you on a more personal level through this fireside chat. And for that reason, could you please tell me more about working with Vino and how that initiative and your work elsewhere helped prepare you for your work here in Chicago?
Well, thank you so much, Susan. It's wonderful to be with you. And I always laugh about Vino, and he's effusive, if nothing else. But, you know, I started working with him on the efforts that he has launched to really look at increasing access to life-saving medicines and other public health measures, particularly for Africa. So, you know, it grew out of some of the work that he had been doing around, you know, forgiving debt and debt relief and aid and investing in particularly poor countries with a big focus on Africa. So, you know, I've been on his board for over a decade now and continue to work very closely, even though I'm not as involved on a day-to-day level in the international arena. We have been partners for a long time, and I, you know, really so value what he has done as a celebrity, and using his celebrity status to really bring to light the issues of global health and poverty, and how we in rich nations can be more generous about how we think about our commitment to the rest of the world. So it's been a real pleasure to work with him. He is an awesome human being.
Well, the reference of my queen certainly caught my attention. You're also a pediatrician and a public health expert, and that had to have you be really well prepared for when COVID hit. Could you talk a little bit about that background?
Yeah, so it was really fortuitous. I have spent better part of 2/3 of my career focusing on public health, both here in this country, but also doing a lot of work globally. Kind of shifted when I went to CARE to focus more on economic development and global poverty. And now here in Chicago, working on how do we really look at issues of economic inequity here in Chicago. And so, when COVID hit, we had this kind of perfect storm, if you will, of a public health crisis that brought on an economic crisis. And so I was, with my background in public health and now economic development, was really very much at this nexus of a public health crisis that caused an economic crisis. And my two worlds and backgrounds, I guess, came together at just the right time.
Well, we're very glad you were in Chicago when that happened.
I'm honored to be here.
And I think that your husband might have had something to do with your coming to Chicago too. So could you talk a little bit about what brought you to Chicago?
Well, actually, my husband, who was born and raised in Chicago, went to medical school here and then left over 40 years ago. Never thought he would come back to Chicago. When we moved from Atlanta to Washington, D.C., we said we would never come anywhere north of Washington, D.C. Neither of us like cold weather. So this was definitely not in our plans. But, I was quite intrigued when I was called about the job at the Chicago Community Trust. It was at a time when, I had spent a lot of my time focused globally, and really felt that there were a lot of needs and issues here in this country that I felt that, my years of working around the world maybe could bring something to bear in a local context. And so, I was called about this role at the Chicago Community Trust. And the more I talked to people about the potential for really having an impact in one of the greatest cities in America, I became very intrigued with the idea of coming and taking this job. They liked me, I liked them. And 4 years later, this has been an incredible opportunity, to give back and make a difference.
Well, congratulations on your success. And I would love for you to actually talk about the initiatives that you either had in place and they were right for the times, or that you helped put in place once COVID hit.
So when I came about 4 years ago, we kind of took a step back and said, where could we as a organization that is dedicated to having the greatest impact possible in the Chicago region, where could we put our greatest focus and make the biggest difference? And we said that if we look at all the issues that Chicago faces, underneath them, kind of the root cause, if you will, is this unequal economic access and opportunity. And, we know that a lot of that comes from a history of racial segregation, unequal opportunity for, different citizens of this region. And so we said we would make as our highest priority closing the racial and ethnic wealth gap. 2/3 of the region in Chicago are Black and brown. And if we look at wealth and how it's distributed, Black and brown communities have not had the opportunity to realize their full potential. And we recognize that as a community foundation, trying to make a difference in the way that can have the greatest difference. If we're holding back 2/3 of the citizens of this region, we cannot expect that the whole region is going to move forward. So we developed a strategy around economic equity. What would it take to increase household wealth, investment in neighborhoods that have been disinvested, and really elevating the voices of citizens in communities where their voices have not been heard. So that was, where we had put our greatest focus. And then, of course, the COVID pandemic hit, where we again saw this disproportionate impact on communities of color, communities that had been fragile economically before the pandemic hit, that were put in an even worse situation. So we've mounted a major effort focused first on immediate relief for households and communities that had been most hard hit by COVID. And now looking at how do we help make sure that those same communities have the opportunity to recover from this pandemic in an equal way. So looking at recovery with a lens of equity that very much links to our overall focus on closing the racial and ethnic wealth gap.
So could you give me an example of some of the programs that you had put in place before COVID hit in order to strengthen those local communities and elevate them?
So for example, really focusing on how can households have access to a good income? How can families get, whether it's training to be able to get a good job or access to employment that may not have been as available? How do we make sure that neighborhoods where there has been disinvestment have the access to getting credit for home ownership or starting small businesses? How do we make sure that households don't go into so much debt so that if they are able to get a good income, can buy a home, don't end up with so much debt, whether it's student loans or predatory lending or whatever the debt source may be, so that they're stripped of whatever wealth they're able to accumulate. So those are the kinds of things we're working on. How do you help households get a foothold? How do we make sure that we incentivize investment in neighborhoods where there's been disinvestment? And then again, as I mentioned, how do we make sure we lift the voices of communities so that they're actors in their own stories?
And I think that you've been very adept at forming collaborations or encouraging other philanthropists to join you in those efforts. So could you talk a little bit about those collaborations or other philanthropists who you think are doing a great job?
Sure. And, it's one of the things that I have so enjoyed about being here in Chicago. It is such a collaborative ecosystem. We in the philanthropic community work hand in glove together. Many of the initiatives that we have started, we partner with our other philanthropic partners like the MacArthur Foundation or the Joyce Foundation or McCormick, Polk, et cetera. So, we really have worked very closely, not just with our philanthropic partners, but also looking at working with businesses, because we believe that businesses are part of the solution as well. Philanthropy won't do it, can't do it alone. We need the public sector. We work closely with the government. We need the private sector. We work very closely with business, and then other philanthropic actors as well. One of the things that I was so pleased to be a part of was working with the Pritzker Traubert Foundation when they did the Chicago Prize, $10 million to an organization that could really demonstrate that they could bring transformative change to a community where there had been massive disinvestment. So those are the kinds of things that make you feel good about being part of this ecosystem, because this is a caring, giving city with great partners and great collaboration.
That's Indiana University Lilly School of Philanthropy says that Chicago is 50% more philanthropic than any other city in our country. I believe that. I also think that great neighborhoods are made possible when financial institutions and the healthcare institutions and the educational institutions are all working in sync too. And I believe that you've done a good job of sort of fostering those kind of connections.
Right. No, what we feel like as the community foundation, we have a real role as conveners, bringing people together, who are aligned with the sorts of work that we're trying to accomplish. So we definitely feel that we cannot do this alone. It is all about partnership, and it's bringing people together, aligning our activities, kind of rowing in the same direction so that we can really have greater impact than any of us could have by ourselves.
All right. And I'm encouraging anyone who is watching this who has any additional questions about that to please send it to us through the chat. We'll get around to answering them. Can we go back to the before Chicago times and all the way back to sort of your formative years? Can you please tell us a little bit about your family of origin?
Well, I'm the middle of 5 children. I had 2 older sisters and 2 younger brothers. We grew up in Buffalo, New York. And I'm very pleased to have grown up in a family that felt that it was important for us to get a great education, but also to use that education in a way that could give back. And so for me, being able to give back, being able to contribute, to be able to make a change in people's lives that's meaningful has always been very much a part of, who I am and the values that I was raised with from the very early days.
Where were you in the order of 5?
In middle. So I had 2 older sisters, 2 younger brothers.
All right. And what's the funniest story that those sisters or your brothers would tell about you?
Well, there's one story that they often will laugh about where this was in my last year in high school, and I wanted to get a place in an AP advanced placement course. For some reason, I guess I got there a little bit late, and the professor said, the teacher said, "Sorry, there's no more places here for you. If you can find a seat, you're welcome, but I don't see any seats here." I never take no for an answer. So I went outside, found a chair, moved it into the classroom. And he said, "Well, I guess, you've got a place in the class." So, I've never been one to take no for an answer. I've always tried to figure out a creative way to make a way. And, that's kind of who I am.
That's can-do spirit. Love that. And then tell us a little bit about your husband. You married later than most people do in life. And I think I saw that you actually thought you would never get married. So please speak a little bit about that.
Yeah. So as I laugh and say, I got married at the age that most people start becoming grandparents. But, it wasn't my plan not to get married. It was just the way things evolved. I guess I was very busy with my career, and because I traveled so much, it probably made it hard to think about settling down. But I had met my husband, my now husband, probably 40 years before we actually got married. We met at a student medical conference. He was a speaker at this conference. He was doing his residency. I was in medical school. We became good friends, and we had a lot of mutual friends. So we stayed in touch over all those decades. And when the timing seemed to be right for both of us, it just happened.
Well, that gives everybody
so
hope.
It's kind of like marrying your best friend. It's been a wonderful journey. Now 5 years, and haven't looked back once.
And ended up settling in a much colder city than you thought you were going to.
Definitely.
So what do you love about Chicago?
Chicago is an incredibly welcoming, friendly place. And, I was welcomed very warmly when I came here. People have a certain love of this city that is palpable. And, the community comes together. People come together here in a way that I think is extraordinary. I've never been in, as I mentioned earlier, as collaborative an ecosystem where people all feel like they want to contribute to making this region a better place, and they want to do it together. And they understand that, leave your egos at the door. And this is really about getting the job done. So I have really, really enjoyed my time here in Chicago. It's a unique city. And I think again, it's a city that you can't help but love it because people from Chicago are so deeply proud of their city.
So let's talk about the future for Chicago, because this has been a tough time. With the programs that you've helped put in place and the dynamics that you see going forward, what is your hope for where we'll be 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and how can others help get us there?
Well, what I hope is that Chicago can go down in history as one of the large American cities that really took the issues and the challenges of inequity seriously and really thought about how do you make this a city that works for all of its citizens. And so, it's why we have committed ourselves to this issue of closing the wealth gap, because we feel like if we can make a difference on people's economic opportunity, we all prosper. And so that's what I look forward to seeing, is that some of the things that we do actually take hold, and we start to see a city that has equity at its core, and that it's a city that works well for all of its citizens.
And your call to action for others, for me and the audience for Better Magazine, what can we do to help make that happen?
Yeah, I think all of us, no matter where we are, have a role to play. Whether it's through your faith institution, whether it's through the civic organization that you work with, whether it's through your schools, all of us can play a role because all of us have a voice. We can vote. We can demonstrate our values through who we put in office. We can do it through the organizations that we work with. But I think mostly becoming educated about the issues here in our region, and then figuring out wherever you sit, how can you make a difference? But I think it really just means all of us recognizing that we have a role to play.
So Make It Better does try to provide a comprehensive resource of here's how you can help. Here's where you can go. If there's anything in particular that you'd like to point us toward as we publish this article and our content, to learn more through the Chicago Community Trust, we welcome that suggestion.
Well, I would just say, feel free to go on our website, www.cct.org. We have a huge compendium of organizations that we work with. Sponsor an organization, donate to an organization that's making a difference. Open a donor advised fund with us. It's a wonderful way to be able to be generous and work with us. We advise our donors on where are the places where their dollars can make the biggest difference. So, see us as a resource, and hopefully, more people will be encouraged to align their interest and their giving with some of the things that we're working on.
I love that reference to the Donor Advised Fund. And I think that's a wonderful way for families to work together to sort of unearth what cause they might want to support as a family. So do you have any suggestions, not just for an individual, but for a family who wants to nurture that in the next generation too?
Yeah, we do. And we do a lot of philanthropic advising for families and generations. But it starts with, where's your heart? Where are your values? What really makes you feel motivated to give? And we're happy to work with people to really be able to unlock their passion and their commitments.
And what I love about what I've been hearing you say is that whatever you're directing them toward, it's quite likely to feed a much larger initiative, so that with every dollar you give, the trust is helping connect it to a lot of others and some people who can really make a difference in the community.
Exactly.
That's great. Okay, so Let's go back to the personal. I also really am fascinated with the description of your regal bearing and fashion models being envious. And I have to say that I think casual observers would say you're probably the best dressed, powerful women in our city too. So can you share some of your style and fitness tips for us?
Well, fitness, you know, I like to get up every morning and do something. Wakes me up, you know, whether, when the weather is nice, I will jog along the river walk. I have a Peloton bike that I get on. I also have a jump rope. And I have a trainer that I work out with a couple times a week. So I like to stay physically active because I think, you know, it's both important for your body, but it's also important for your soul and your mind. Fashion, I just buy what I like.
Yeah. You make it look good. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us?
I guess again, to your point about everybody can make a difference. I just hope people realize how important it is, how their voice matters, and being engaged in the community around them. So I just encourage people. I feel like I get more back by what I do than I probably give. And, you know, we all have that gene that makes us feel good when we make a difference for people. So I just encourage people to tap into that and find something that, that they're passionate about and give back. Because we all, when we give, we get back multifold.
Completely agree. We make a living by what we earn. We make a life by what we give.
Exactly.
Helene, it has been such a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us. Thank you for your leadership in our city and your inspiration for the rest of us too.
And it's wonderful to see you again.
And well, I look forward to sharing all of this content with our audience in November. We're gonna have a lot to celebrate.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.